What's up, horror fans? This is Pete from the Lacercast in his garage. Right, there we go. And I'm in my garage, and Danny's in his car. And what other
Not
perfect
in a
time?
garage.
Yes, there we go. So we're going to talk about a movie today that it's interesting because I personally think there's not a lot to talk about, but I still think it's worthy of discussion. I'm talking about In a Violent Nature, which is streaming on Shudder right now. So, Danny, you saw this one in the theater, right?
So this movie had a very limited theatrical release, and I ended up going to a small movie theater in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, that
Right.
I had not been to since Watchmen came out.
Oh, wow.
Watchmen was, I believe, 2008, and so that was the last time I'd been in this movie theater. And they had completely redone it. So if you live in Brooklyn, I recommend the Alpine Cinema in Bay Ridge. It's very cheap compared to most multiplexes. And I saw In a Violent Nature there, and it is a very interesting movie.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
I think that's the best overall word I can use to describe. I know a lot of people who've seen this have complained about the pacing and that it's boring, and why do I want to watch a guy walk for 60% of the runtime? And that never bothered me. Like I was just kind of completely fascinated by the whole idea of it. I guess when it comes to slashers, I'm just kind of looking for anything a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a really interesting take on the genre. Um, and that's what I said in the short review that I posted, the spoiler-free short review that I did when I walked out of the theater. Uh, I'm gonna bring up a movie I know you haven't seen, but we've talked about a little bit, and that is Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon.
Right.
This movie kind of reminded me of that, in that it takes the slasher genre and it kind of, in a way, a completely different way to Leslie Vernon, Behind the
Yeah.
Mask. It peels the curtain back a little bit, and it kind of shows you what's going on in the slasher movie other than following the cast of would-be victims and final girl boy characters.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love Behind the Mask, and you will too. It's that good. It's so freaking great.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
This, I don't know. Well, I don't know if this will have the staying power, but I do know they already greenlit a sequel. So
right.
I'm willing to keep watching these as long as I guess. Look, with this movie, there's two things everybody was talking about. There's the style, which is basically you are first person with the killer for most of the movie. And second of all, there is one specific kill. And so, me being me, I went into this movie going, there's no way this kill is going to live up to the hype that it has.
Right.
And the kill somehow managed to leap over the hype that I had and surpass it.
Yeah, yeah, and for me as well, I could absolutely say the same as well. We'll definitely talk about that. I guess we could say that'll be in spoilers. You know, I don't really there's much to spoil about this movie, but what's interesting, I did a little research on it before we got started, and it's written and directed by Chris Nash, who's done a lot of shorts, right? Um, but apparently he has worked with Stephen Kostansky because he has a credit for that movie. What is it called? The Out of Beyond or Behold the Void, or what's that movie? The Void something?
The
Is it just
Void.
called The Void?
Yeah.
Okay, so he did that. He has some kind of part in it. It's weird because it doesn't really say what his role was on that, but on IMDb he's credited in that. And then he also was a like special effects makeup guy on Psycho Goreman.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to me, and that makes sense with the kills that we see in this movie. And like, oh, okay, This guy has like worked with some practical stuff. He's done some really amazing looking practical stuff. To me, this movie, it feels like a found footage movie, even though it isn't. And I keep thinking about the Blair Witch Project, especially with like the killer walking through the woods so much, like the Blair Witch Project, they're walking through the woods so much. And I kept getting vibes of like Hell House LLC for some reason, even though the subject matter is very different. I kept feeling like I was watching those movies too. Did you get that vibe?
I think this movie like sets itself out to basically say, look, we're Friday the 13th, but we're following Jason.
Right.
But
Right.
I totally get the found footage aspect of it, because like obviously there is a camera behind the killer.
Right.
But it also just feels like at points the camera just kind of floats around and shows you, like I thought the campfire scene in this movie was done particularly well.
Yeah.
The way that it doesn't focus at all on any of the characters talking. Like there's a moment in Friday the 13th Part 2, which is one of my favorite Friday the 13th movies, where the head counselor gives the whole, so let me tell you about Jason.
Right.
And the camera's focusing in on him and then focuses in on all the kids around the campfire. And then there's like a jump scare where like one kid jumps out with a mask on to scare them. And this movie basically does that scene, but it does not ever really give you any attention to the kids telling the story. It
Right.
just kind of lingers around. And I love that, like, you keep seeing Johnny, the killer, kind of off in the background, and it takes your eyes like a little bit of adjustment to like realize that, oh okay, that is him. Oh, okay. And it again, these are things that like I totally understand anybody who walked out of this movie feeling bored out of their mind. But for me, I kind of dug that stuff. I thought it was super intriguing that like the way that Chris Nash used the camera, the way that he really doesn't focus on any human characters until like a little bit later in the movie when like a ranger shows up, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, is this all of a sudden, are we going to get like a leading man type final girl situation?
Right.
But even then, the movie just doesn't follow any like conventional like movie formulas. As I
Right.
drop my phone.
No, I know, and it's funny because I know that there's different types of movies. We discuss them in film class. I just unfortunately can't remember the titles, but there's one where it's like this movie is set in the real world and it's like as realistic as possible. Then there's one where it's like, okay, well, this is the real world, but it's like the character's perspective. Then there's another where it's like this is complete fantasy. And the reason why this is feeling like a found footage movie is because it fell into that category where it's like they're trying to make it as realistic as possible. And one of the criteria for a movie like that is that the only music that's in the movie is not from a soundtrack that's playing in the background. It's like if someone's in a car and the music's playing, or if someone has the radio on. And I can't remember what they call that. I think it's like called diegetic, where it's just like it's just the background noise. It's not like a soundtrack that's playing. And so that's in found footage movies, that's what you usually have because there's no soundtrack. And you're absolutely right where like there's multiple scenes of people talking, but it's never like head on full discussion kind of conversation. It's always like you're looking at the person that's being talked to, right? Or like or people are talking but they're like far away. And to me that always reminds me of found footage scenes where like maybe a person's talking and they don't realize that they're being recorded, and so you just kind of see like half of their body, or maybe someone put a camera down and like you're hearing the conversation but it's not focused on anyone. So it's very much like camera there, but it's not like a person's perspective. It's like, the camera is the person's perspective. And it reminded me a lot too, I just wanted to bring this up too, of that movie that I really liked that we watched by Ty West called The Sacrament. I even got a little bit of vibes of that too, where it's like this kind of found footage thing. And I know I keep saying found footage, and this movie is definitely not, but it sure feels like it.
Well,
You
yeah,
know?
and the Sacrament wasn't found footage. It was like docu-style, where like
Right.
the whole point of that movie is like a film crew goes somewhere to record something. So
Right.
it's like it's not just like, oh, these people died and look at we found this camera. Let's put the footage on.
Right.
And really, like, found footage is such a misnomer because most found footage movies are either docu-style or something else of that nature. Like the Blair Witch and Cannibal Holocaust are found footage movies in that they literally find footage and then
Right.
play the audience the footage that they find.
Right.
And that's not the case in like most of these movies, right? Like Paranormal Activity, even like it's not found footage. It's the family left like cameras everywhere to record what was happening, and then we're watching those camera feeds, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So this is just another kind of take on that genre, I think.
Yeah.
And like I see across the bottom you have ambient slasher, and I really like that term because it's like you're watching Johnny walk through the woods. You hear in the background, you hear these 20 somethings giggling and laughing and having fun and setting up the camp. You hear the leaves crackling and things that are, in nature, where like if you were like trying to fall asleep. My son yesterday fell asleep in the living room and he put on, I guess Netflix has like rainfall, and it
Oh.
so
Yeah.
I'm like, I literally stood at the TV for about 35 seconds wondering what movie he was watching before I realized, schmuck, this is like an ambient documentary. I should just walk away. And I like that idea that it's like, because then when the kills come, there's also that real guttural, visceral feeling to the kills where you're not just seeing them, but you're hearing them. There's no, like you said, there's no soundtrack, there's no music, there's no there's no John Carpenter, Halloween score to or music cues to alert the audience that a kill is about to happen or that a jump scare is about to happen. And so the kills that we get feel extra kind of gross in a way because
Yeah.
we're hearing them and we're experiencing them. We're experiencing them as if they're happening, without like the traditional, oh, this is a movie aspect to it.
Right. Right. And it's funny because there are a few things though that are like parts of storytelling or supernatural. Like there's this one part in the very beginning where I was like, oh, that's interesting, where the main killer's name is Johnny. Okay. And I guess we could kind of say we're starting to go into spoilers now. It follows him like trying to track down this necklace. At one point, he goes into a person's house. He looks in a mirror, and the mirror takes on this like kind of blue, cloudy quality, and it shows a flashback of his dad talking to him. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, like it was feeling like docu style or found footage or whatever, but now all of a sudden it's like showing his perspective. There's there's not a lot like that, but yeah, actually, I think there's not really anything else like that in the whole movie. But besides that, and then the fact that like they start to kind of talk about him as if he is like Jason, where he is this like supernatural killer. It is like you said, like very raw. Wow, and my New York accent like really came out there. I was like raw, or maybe it was Gordon Ramsay raw. But yeah, like when the kills do happen, it's just so like it's perfect for a slasher because they are like so like thoughtless and like just brutal. You know, when he kills some people, there's one point, and we'll start talking about the kills now too. But there's one point where he's walking, and we have this shot, an aerial shot, looking down at him, and he just goes like this with the axe, and it's real casual. It's just like he's almost like just like kind of like throwing his shirt off or something. He's just like, whatever. But then you like keep going and following him, and you see that he hit a guy right in the fucking head with that axe, you know? And I think that that's the best thing about this movie is that because of the way it's filmed, just like you said, it makes the violence way more intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to talk about like what this character actually is?
You just watched this. I actually haven't gotten a chance to rewatch it from the theater, so you probably are better to.
No,
I remember that they kind of go into like the whole story. It almost reminded me of the backstory that they gave the character of Victor Crowley in Hatchet.
Oh, okay. Another movie I haven't seen, but I know what you're talking about.
another movie that is basically worth watching for the kills alone.
Okay. Well, as far as the story goes, they're telling the story of this killer. His name's Johnny. They're telling it around a campfire, and they say that they call him slow in the movie, and that's kind of like a little talking point they have where they're like, slow? What does that mean? It's like not PC to call him slow. But, he's like special needs, and basically they have this child who's special needs go up like in this tower in this town to go find some toys. They tell him there's going to be toys in this tower, and they scare him, and he falls to his death. Then there are like 2 sets of massacres where essentially he comes back and like gets his revenge. And he kills a bunch of people one time. Then 10 years later, he comes and kills a bunch of people again. And then like this is now the 3rd time because someone has taken this necklace that's significant to him.
Yeah, the movie opens. The movie opens where like the camera is like placed almost on the ground, and you hear characters talking about like a massacre, and you're like first person perspective is on this necklace, and you're like, you hear a character be like, oh yeah, I think that was his mother's, and then they take it, and then the characters walk away, and the camera just lingers, and then the camera switches perspective to outside of this little shack, and then you see like almost like a zombie returning from the grave, or like Jason coming out of the ground in part 6. Johnny like rises from the dirt to go after and slowly walk through the woods to get his necklace back. And that's like the inciting incident for this, like, Friday the 13th-esque slasher movie.
Yeah. And just like in My Bloody Valentine and Friday the 13th, there's some significance about like the way that he's dressed. He goes to a ranger station after he does his it's his second kill, but it's like the first kill that you see that like you explicitly see it. Because like the very first kill, I think they actually do it really well. He goes to this one guy's house looking for the necklace, and the guy, it's this old man, he's kind of chasing him out into the woods, and the old man steps in his own bear trap. And then you see a cut of Johnny's hand going towards the old man's face, and the old man's like, no. And then it just cuts to his like red bloody hand. And I was like, oh, that's kind of subtle and cool. But then the next fucking kill is this dude that's standing right in front of a tree. And Johnny comes up behind him and like puts a fucking blade in his mouth and then chops off the top of his head. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I like the kills in this movie. And I give Chris Nash a lot of credit for this. It feels like he intentionally started where he was like, we're going to hint at the gore. Then we're going to give you some traditional, you've seen this kind of before, Jason level, Victor Crowley level gore where, somebody gets like part of their head cut off. And then we are going to hit you with kills that you have never seen, and we're going to gross you the fuck out.
Yes.
And I think it was so smart because like you said, if that guy who gets caught in the bear trap, if he like rips that guy apart on screen, then the kills later, especially the one kill that everybody knows and talks about from this movie, it's not going to have the same effect.
Yeah.
And I even like, and we'll talk about this obviously coming up, where there's one kill that is so insanely over the top that it almost becomes fun in a weird way.
Yeah.
But then by the end, there's another kill which is so graphic, slow, and methodical that it almost comes fully around to being mean and nasty. And you're just like, all right, get it done already. Like, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really like clever thing because, you know, part of the thing in any slasher movie or slasher franchise is coming up with new and creative ways to kill people.
Agreed.
You know, I always think about Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. That's the one where Jason fights the girl who's basically Carrie.
Yeah.
And if you go back and watch that movie, Jason has a massive body count in that movie, and he never kills the same character twice with the same weapon. That's the movie where he has the sleeping bag kill. He kills somebody with like a tent spike. He kills somebody by crushing their head. At one point, he's chasing somebody through the woods, and then he randomly pulls out like the electric like lawnmower, and you're like, where did he even get that from? He kills like the nerdy girl with like hand scythes. And then there's like a great kill at the end where the blonde opens the door and he just axes her in the face and chucks her body across the room. So like and I always remember that because I always thought it was like funny that like we associate Jason with a machete. Right. And in that movie, because in Part 6, he kills almost everybody with a variation of the machete.
Right.
And then you skip forward one movie and it's all these different weapons, all these different types of kills. And this movie, I think, is, you know, as a new slasher, which is apparently starting a new franchise, getting off on Terrifier is that as well. Where I have been hearing amazing things out of Fantastic Fest about, and I've seen the first batch of reviews on Terrifier 3, which are like somehow they managed to outdo what they did in the first two movies. And you know, it's a crucial part of the slasher movie is the kills. And so this movie, I think, made it a point that it wanted to stand out for two separate reasons. You get those incredible kills from a guy who, like you said, obviously has a background in special effects, a background in makeup work, and creating characters and gory violence. And then you have this perspective of the way the movie is shot, which is so unique. And I feel like this is a movie that I will always recommend it to people because of those two things. Like, listen, it's an hour and 35 minutes. A lot of it is walking. A lot of it is following a killer through the woods, wondering when the fuck he's going to find another victim.
Right.
But when he does, they make it worth your while.
Like, It has this infamous kill that you keep talking about. We can talk about it now because I think we're in spoilers at this point. Unfortunately for me, this kill was ruined for me.
What happened?
No, you're still there. I can see and hear you. It's still live from Danny's crotch, looking up at Danny's face. But
do you see me? Am I here?
Yeah, you're here.
Oh, okay. Because you were like, now it's time to talk about that kill, and then you disappeared. And I was like, okay, I guess it's not.
Well, right. So for that kill, the one I know that you're talking about, it was spoiled for me. It was spoiled for me via Twitter and then TikTok. So basically, you can go into more detail about the kill. But at one point, he sticks a chain through a girl and then sticks the top of the chain with the hook into her head and then pulls her through her own body. Right now, there's
the yoga
a gift
kill, as I believe it's referred to, is the yoga kill because the girl she's standing at the top of this like mountaintop, like this beautiful vista, and she's doing yoga. She's got her headphones in so she doesn't hear Johnny coming. And you mentioned, like, he's got like this fire. He goes to the ranger station to get the old-fashioned fire helmet, and he takes like the fire hook and chain, which is a really unique weapon that we really haven't seen, which again adds to that, interesting, like, we're going to see some interesting kills with this because that's a weapon we really haven't seen before.
Right. And so, like, for me, it was spoiled because on Twitter, there was just this random GIF where it shows the girl's head being like kind of pulled forward by the chain. And it's like, obviously she's dead because like the way that her head and her neck goes, it's unnatural. Then I was on TikTok the other day. I was watching TikTok with my daughter who's 8. And I made her look away, and I saw that like this guy basically made his dad watch that kill. And so you see the kill kind of like off screen, like out of focus, but I could kind of tell what was going on, where he's basically pulling the girl's head through the hole in her body. And you saw the dad's reaction as he's watching, and he's just like, the dad, before they do the recording, the dad's like, oh, I've seen stuff. This isn't going to bother me. And then he's watching the clip, and he's like, right? And so, like, it was spoiled for me, but yet it was still super disturbing. Like, that's going to be the thumbnail for this episode, is him walking up to her while she's doing the yoga. One thing, to me, subtlety in movies is always way more impressive than like just over the top, like, let's be as sensational as possible. I think it's like much more creative when you're subtle but disturbing. And like leading up to this yoga kill, there's a part where the two girls are talking at a pier, and it reminds me very much of the Friday the 13th remake with like Jensen Ackles. And there's two girls at the pier.
No, the other one.
Jared Padalecki. Thank you. Yeah. Or Jared.
Jensen Ackles was in the My Bloody Valentine.
Which I think about that with this movie too. But Johnny like walks into the water, and one of the girls is in the water swimming, and she just goes under the water. And you're just looking at a lake, and there's that ambient slasher. You're just looking at a lake.
I fucking loved this scene.
Yeah.
All the yoga kill, the kills at the end. This might have been my favorite part of the movie. Was you get, Jason has done this many times before, where he's like walked into the water and like killed, pulled down a girl swimming, or popped up and attacked a boat that like a naked girl's hanging out on. Johnny just kind of walks into the water, and the girls are on the other side of the like lake, so they don't notice. And you're sitting there, and you're wondering to yourself, like, so he's just walking across the bottom. How long is it going to take for him to get there? And so then, like, the one girl gets up and walks away. The camera never moves. And you just see that girl go down under the water. She never comes up. It's not a graphic kill. That's it. She's dead.
Yeah.
And then minutes go by, and Johnny comes up on the other side of the water. And it's this just epic long take.
Right.
That I really adored. And then, of course, yes, the other girl does go up to do her yoga, and it gets us to the famous kill.
Right. And so, like, that makes the movie memorable unto itself, that one scene. Then there's the scene later that you're talking about with the ranger, where like the ranger tells like the lore, and he's like, my dad put him in the ground. I'm going to put him in the ground. Or like, I put him in the ground 10 years ago. I'm going to put him in the ground again. And you're like, oh, no, this dude's totally going to get killed. And then you're talking about when he has that saw that just goes like through the wood, right? And just slices it in half. Yeah. It kind of reminded me of that movie Freaky. Remember there's a scene where like fucking the guy from Ferris Bueller's Day Off is on the saw and he gets split in half. But this one is much more, like you said, methodical and kind of cruel. Because the guy's still alive the whole fucking time.
Doesn't he break his back or so that he can't move, and he and he's just like paralyzed.
Right. He's just like paralyzed, but you can still see his face. And it's not, and that's another thing. It's the subtlety, because he's not like, you're not looking at his face and he's not going like, ooh, like freaking out. It's just like these little subtle kind of like quirks and stuff. And you can tell like the guy's still in there, as this is all happening. And it's really effective and really disturbing. I keep comparing this movie to other movies, and I hate doing that because I feel like everything's kind of been done before. We've seen all different types of stories, and I think it's kind of lazy to be like, this is ripping off this is ripping off that. But I think that when they do something and they do it well, who cares if it reminds you of something else? Like my thing, and this kind of can like wrap it up too. I was going to say that the ending of this movie kept giving me fucking Strange Darling flashbacks too. Did you get that at all?
Well, okay, so obviously you saw Strange Darling first,
Right.
and then this. I saw this, and then I saw Strange Darling.
Right.
I'm glad you brought up the ending, because I was ready to walk out of this movie shouting its praises from the rooftops. And then the last 10 to 12 minutes happens.
Yeah.
And when I say the last 10 to 12 minutes happens, nothing happens. So again, we're talking spoilers. The last 10 minutes of this movie, the final girl who has escaped Johnny so far makes it out to the middle of the woods where there's like a highway, and a car picks her up. And the woman driving the car is an actress who was in Friday the 13th Part 2. So it's like a good little callback of like, oh, it's an actress from a Friday movie. Great.
Right.
And you're kind of sitting there going, okay, is this woman going to be in cahoots with Johnny? Is she like a family member that's helping him?
Right.
Is Johnny going to like throw the hook and pull this girl out of the moving car?
Right.
And instead, the woman tells a story, and you're sitting there and you're just watching and you're waiting, and that's it. And the movie ends. And did you see No Country for Old Men?
Of course.
A lot of people, when that movie ended, and that's a Best Picture winner.
It is.
But when that movie ended, it ended, and even I think it ended on a rather flat note, where you have all these great, compelling characters and interlocking stories, and it kind of just comes back to Tommy Lee Jones in the diner finishing a story from earlier. And you're like, oh, that's it. Okay. Oh, that was great, but like kind of flat.
Yeah.
And I thought this movie ended on a very flat note, where I think part of me sees that like the whole point of the movie was like toying with what you know about slasher movies.
Right.
And maybe this was like Chris Nash's way of saying like, you're going to sit here waiting and expecting some kind of crazy ending, and haha.
Right.
But it didn't work for me, and it knocked it down from like I'm gonna run out and tell everybody I know to see this movie to I'm gonna tell them to see it, but with caveats.
Right.
And to compare it to Strange Darling, because Strange Darling has an ending. Mm-hmm. Again, spoilers for that movie. We did a full review of that. Go check that out. It's one of our favorite movies of the year.
Right.
Strange Darling has an ending where one of the main characters ends up in a car as it's driving. Another character is talking.
Another character's talking, and Danny's freezing. So I will talk over Danny then while he's frozen. But basically, it's the same kind of scenario. It's two people in a car. You're seeing both their perspectives. They're looking over. Very similar road, very similar setting. And basically, it's this long, drawn-out take in this one car on the end of the road on the highway. And it's very similar in both movies. with this movie, there is a woman that's telling a story. And like Danny said already before, you think that the way that that story is going to go is that, like, Johnny's going to show up and get the girl, or maybe that this woman telling the story is in cahoots with Johnny. You're waiting for this big twist. And there is this one part where the girl, well, okay, so spoilers, the girl who's essentially the final girl of the movie, she is like bleeding out a bit. And so the woman that's driving her to safety pulls over to the side of the road to help her. And the girl's like, no, 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 we got to go. We got to go. And you keep thinking Johnny's going to show up at any second. And she stares off into the distance, and you keep thinking you're going to see Johnny in the woods. And it's effective. It's a very, very tense sequence. But, that's it. Like Danny said, the very last shot of the movie is this gasoline tank that the girl was going to use with her boyfriend to, I guess, set Johnny on fire. And she had put the necklace that she now had on the gas tank. And that the very last shot is the gas tank, but it's missing the necklace, which is like saying that, like, Johnny is at rest again and he found the thing that he was going to find. And I think what's really interesting about that whole sequence is the woman that's telling the really long story, and the tension's building up and building up. She's talking about how her brother was like a ranger himself, or like worked in the wilderness, and was attacked by a bear. Oh, here comes Danny. Okay, hold on. Let's add Danny. There he is.
Hey, do you hear me?
Yeah. I was basically summarizing, because I kept going after you froze and stuff. I was basically summarizing what happened in that car and how that woman was telling a story about her brother, right? And it made me think about how the movie's called In a Violent Nature, and she's talking about like a bear attacking her brother. I didn't think until I started making this fucking video with you. Do you think that this movie is kind of like a metaphor about like animals being wild, or like, nature being kind of merciless? I mean, because it's in the fucking title.
Yeah, that could be. I don't know. My phone got overheated again and just turned off. That's why I'm gonna have to talk to my family about giving me a fucking space in my actual home to record. Because
Yes. Or just bring an ice pack and sit your phone on an ice pack when you record in your car.
Ice pack and record from now on.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that could be, like, the title really does not tie into the rest of the movie. Other than people are dying in a violent nature.
Yeah.
So that could be. It just, everything about that ending felt strange and tacked on. Whereas, again, with Strange Darling, it actually had something to do with the character. Like,
right.
The character, something happens to the character, and the way, even like in Strange Darling, the camera kind of fades from color to black and white at the very end.
Yeah.
So I can see a comparison just in the similarity of, like, main character in a car driving away to end the movie, but this just felt weird given what we had watched, because we spent the whole movie basically from Johnny's perspective, and then at the end we now find ourselves with this final girl and this new character we've never met, and it kind of just feels strange.
Yeah. And it's so ironic because I can tell you got your phone on your air conditioner in your car. So it sounds like you're at a fucking airport right now talking to me. And it kind of reminds me of the dialogue in this movie, which is like out of focus and stuff like that. Yeah. So I guess like we should probably wrap it up because like the audio and stuff, people are probably going to kick out. But I liked it. There's some crazy kills in it. I appreciate the sentiment behind it. But like I said to you before this recording, I don't think that it's going to be on my top 10 list. What do you think?
I think this is definitely a movie that could sneak into the back end of my top 10. Again, just because I'm a real sucker for uniqueness. And I think this has that in a big, big way. It has that unique factor.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how a horror fan can watch this movie and complain about, like, boredom when like a movie like Skinamarink came out last year, which was an hour and 40 minutes of like shots of a wall and a toy phone and Lego bricks. And I'm like, still not sure why that movie was as long as it was. And like, so just on a pure unique level, and the idea that, look, very few times in the last 20 years have we gotten new slasher franchises, and we happen to be in a year where we have two competing ones. And this and Terrifier 3, and I said this in my very short, like 45-second review when I walked out of the movie theater. The kill in this movie, the yoga kill in this movie, has set a very high bar for Terrifier 3 to beat in the kill of the year contest.
Right.
Everything I'm hearing about Terrifier 3 is that it probably achieves that goal. So we'll see. I cannot wait for Terrifier 3. I also cannot wait to see The Substance, which I'm going to see later today or tomorrow. And I guess, yeah, I let's put it this way. If you have not seen In a Violent Nature, I 100% recommend that you watch it on Shudder. It's there. Check it out. If you're bored, stick with it until the kills happen.
Okay.
That's what I'll tell you.
That's a good recommendation. And so luckily your AC, I think you might have turned it off or something, but now it sounds okay.
I lowered it a little bit. We'll see what happens.
Nice. But I'll do the plug-in for tonight since you did a little bit of plug-in just there. But basically, Danny and I have been covering the Shudder show Horror's Greatest. And so we're up to episode 4 at this point. Just dropping right before this video is our review of Horror's Greatest number 4, where we talk about horror comedies, and we have Mike Bongiorno from Pop Culture Man Children on there. Then besides that, Danny and I, Danny's just constantly covering whatever's in the theater. He just said he's going to see The Substance. I'm sure there'll be a review for that. We're going to eventually down the road go back to our Anne Rice roots and talk about the book, The Vampire Lestat. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do, because we cover a wide plethora of horror content on this channel. But yeah, my computer's actually about to die in my garage, and Danny is in his car. So I think we're going to sign off. But please, guys, leave a comment. Make sure you like our video, and we will see you guys. There's Danny's steering wheel. We'll see you guys next time.